Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Educated Homebuyer Live with Josh and myself here to talk about real estate, talk about mortgage, and update you on what's actually happening in the economy while we help you become the educated homebuyer. Josh, it's Wednesday, your favorite day of the week, hump day.
Hump day. Tomorrow I have to go to Scottsdale, so we got to make a bunch of phone calls, get some numbers out, get people on board, and then we're heading to the hills. We're heading to, it's not the hills, it's got the valley, the desert.
Does your wife know that you love hump day?
That's a trick question.
Well, I'm asking. I mean, I don't know if Angela knows, so I just want to make sure. She usually
She's
listens,
watching, so I'm sure she'll text us in a second
me in a
and
minute and let me know that whether she knows that or not. But anyhow, tonight, we started the title of the episode is "The Fed is Split on Where Interest Rates Should Go," and that's where we're going to start the conversation. The Fed minutes from January came out today, and there were some things in there that were somewhat surprising. But it could impact the direction of where interest rates go from here. We're sitting today as we're filming this video near the low levels, 3-year lows, if you will, right around 6%, which Josh will show the charts for in a little bit. But before we dive into the charts, dive into that conversation, make sure you let us know where you're watching from. And also, if you have any questions, now's a good time to throw them in the chat. Because once we come out of looking at the charts, which we cover inventory, demand, inflation, basically what's happening out there in the economy that's impacting everything else, then we dive into questions, and that becomes the rest of the show. We do this every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We've been doing it for 4 years, Josh. 5 years, yeah. I said 5 years.
Jeff,
yes.
we have a critical
I saw the question.
It's related to that, and we need to address this. We need to address
the intro song.
What happened to the intro song? These folks it's not on Spotify. They don't know where to go to listen to it. I mean, do we need to just make our own Spotify channel with the music? Now, our music separate from the podcast.
The song, it's part of the reason the song went to the wayside
viral
is it did not. Yeah, well, viral is to be, is all subjective there. But on YouTube, it's really easy to put up a countdown, a timer, and what have you, and let people kind of come in and you fast forward it later on. The problem with going live on the same time on, say, Instagram is that Instagram, regardless of when you hit the live button, it takes it all the way back from when the show started. So it plays that 2-minute song on Instagram for anybody that finds the video. And I can't imagine anybody sticking through that to actually get to the full episode. So
I think you're crazy. I think they go back and they listen to it over and over again. If
they
you
may
look at our
retention
graph is pinned high at the song, and then it drops after the song drops out.
We'll actually have to check it out and see what happens there. But with that said, let's dive into some charts and start having the conversation, Josh. And as I kind of mentioned earlier, this came out today. This is from CNBC, but kind of nails down what's happening there. The Fed officials are split on where interest rates should go based on the minutes that came out in January. So, Josh, there's an idea that, not all Fed members are on board. We've kind of said that. We had a couple dissent. We've had people think that rates could go even higher. But essentially what the minutes pointed to was that there were members in the Fed who mentioned this idea that, hey, we're not even throwing out the possibility that rates, we might actually raise rates at some point if inflation continues, if it persists. So there's this whole idea that, the Fed is split, that they don't know where rates are going to go, so on and so forth. Josh, so thoughts on that?
We'll get into it when we get to my slides. Unless you want to just start there, we can go through.
No, I just think have a friendly conversation here about the Fed and maybe not necessarily the political side, but the divide.
Yeah. What is the Fed looking at? They're looking at jobs. We're going to have a chart in here that shows that jobs are clearly weakening. Several of them delusionally continue to comment on the jobs market being stronger than it actually is. It's probably not as bad as the chart that I'm going to show you, even though it's not manipulated data. It's accurate data. Probably not as bad as it would imply. But inflation is moderating fairly rapidly, as expected, as predicted. Two things. The tariff stuff was a one-time price adjustment. It may mean that inflation stays slightly elevated over time, but we are seeing productivity gains and we are seeing AI impact the inflation rate as a whole over the long haul. So when we look at all of that, they're just looking at the wrong direction. Those are the things that they look at. Those are the things that they can control, setting interest rates. But we've also seen that their hiking of rates aggressively over the last few years and then giving some of that back didn't have the same impact as it had previously, 15, 20 years ago. If they had hiked from where they were almost at zero all the way up to 6%, like that would have had a really, really big negative shock impact on the economy, and it didn't this time. And then, almost 200 basis points of cuts since that peak. Same thing, has not had the stimulatory effect that we would think. So when you look at it, that's one of the reasons why Warsh has been penned to be the next head of the Fed, because he thinks they have outdated models. He thinks they're looking at a different world and they're pushing on the gas and hitting the brakes on a car that it just doesn't work that way anymore. So my take is they are out of touch and insane, and hopefully with the new Fed chair coming in, we'll get a new voice in the room and lead it in a different direction.
Gotcha. And you kind of threw AI out there, and Warsh is a big believer in the whole AI being able to facilitate the job market in a way that, jobs may pull back, but it might not pull back in a way where we actually see that slump in the economy, because those jobs could be picked up by the AI models, and so on and so forth. So thoughts on that?
No, other than big picture, you look back, the Industrial Revolution, there was upheaval in the short run, but long run, it didn't lead to massive unemployment. It allowed people to do more. They were able to do higher and better things versus low-level things that the machines can do. I know there are people that believe that we're headed towards either some utopia or dystopia where the machines do everything and people are redundant and useless. I don't think we're headed there. If you're using AI properly, it should already be impacting your life to make it better, faster, easier, except for the times when you want to grab your computer and throw it out the window.
You really angry when it doesn't do what you want it to do. But with that, guys, we always like to start with inventory, because supply and demand is what drives housing markets. That's why we saw the craziness during the pandemic, just a lack of supply. We still have that lack of supply, but it is picking back up. This week, we saw inventory increase from 687,000 properties to 690,000 single families nationwide. This is a nationwide number that's 8.24% above where we were last year. Not necessarily, kind of moving similar to what we saw in 2025. There's a little bit of a lag here, I think, because of some of the weather that's happening across the United States in different markets and so on and so forth. But again, we're headed in the right direction because inventory is still above where we were last year, and we're seeing those numbers increase. With that said, same chart here. Just a 7-day moving average, but it just shows you everything below that red line is essentially when inventory was tight. That was during the pandemic. Everything above that is essentially prior to the pandemic, which were more normal years outside of that 2020, that blue line there that kind of just goes sideways and drops off a cliff. So you could see we're kind of in the middle of the road with regard to inventory, about where it should be to some degree. Although we would like to see it higher in many cases out there, give buyers more opportunity. But either way, it's not the lows that we saw back in 2021, which is I think we're all very thankful for. So here in Orange County, 3,380 homes on the market. That's a 2.66% increase week over week. Again, that line looks very similar, just kind of following last year, parallel to a T, whereas Huntington Beach, we're below those numbers that we saw last year, but we did have a pretty big swing week over week, now sitting at 206 properties on the market. That is a 7.28% increase week over week. So ideally, we'd like to see these numbers continue to increase, and we're likely to see these numbers continue to grow here as we head into what we call the spring buying season, which is right around the corner. Now, new listings, we did see a slight decrease compared to last year, 54,000 versus 56,000. Again, all weather related based on everything I'm reading, so not much to talk about there. This is a look at total inventory, total percentage of, new home percentage of total inventory. So how many homes on the market out there are new construction? And you can see during the 22, 23, 24, almost 25% of the homes on the market, 1 in 4 was new construction. we're down back to like 20%. So 1 in 5 now. So depending on the market you're in, a lot of the inventory out there could be new construction versus, where we're located here in Southern California, it's probably closer to, 5%, maybe 10, depending on which local market you're in. But new construction really, really low in the big scheme.
And Jeb, we didn't put the charts in because it's boring data that no one likes to see, but we had building permits today. Permits for new construction way down. They're elevated in terms of anything at any stage of construction, but building permits issued and then new homes ready for sale. And if you look at that chart is instructive because it tells you in a normalish market back in the 90s to early 2000s, 10 to 15% of the market is new construction. Post GFC, the builders got stuck with a ton of inventory. They built too much, so it dipped and fell off a cliff down to 5% because they were not building anything. And it just went bonkers towards the middle of COVID as all of the other existing home sales, they would come on the market and be gone in 2 days. They were able to build and fill that portion. So if we flash forward 2-3 years, that's probably going to normalize back to that 10 to 15% range.
Agreed. Yeah, it just takes there's a lot of supply out there and a lot of markets. So it's making up a big percentage because, again, you got people locked in, low fixed rates, not willing to sell their homes, and therefore those homes aren't on the market. It's also a time of the year where you don't have a lot of inventory. And so when you're looking at that, the percentage of inventory at the moment, the majority of it is new construction in some of these markets. So something to continue to watch. Weekly pending sales, again, slightly lower than the same time last year, barely, but it is, and probably primarily due to just weather, less buyers out there in the market because of some of the stuff that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, which you'll see here on a chart in just a minute, where those pending sales are primarily located. But either way, I'd like to think that this number is going to continue to follow what we saw last year and probably higher just because of where interest rates are compared to last year. So change in home sales so far. So this is based on pending sales. It's a 4-week rolling average. And you can see the majority of that is happening in that, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. I think Wyoming might be in there, Josh, somewhere pretty close to it. But anyhow, right in that dark blue area, almost 11% increase in home sales. The West Coast, what you got? Oregon, Washington, California, up almost 5%. So that's the bulk of it. And then you could see those areas that were hit the hardest from that weather that we saw, which the Southeast, the weather. Yeah, the Northeast, all of that. I mean, that makes for a big drop in home sales. So, you're seeing numbers slightly below where we were last year, but you're seeing, big decreases in some of these other markets, which would normally probably be, sideways if nothing else. And you would have those numbers growing higher. So.
That would be a really interesting chart to see it over time because the upper Northeast has been the hottest markets. So if rates are down, you would expect maybe sales to be up, but maybe not because they've had the least homes on the market and the shortest days on market. Maybe they're selling as many homes as they can, and the weather just put the brakes on that. So to me, when I look at the upper Northeast and then also the Southwest, basically Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and then the Southeast, Florida, and the Gulf Coast states. It'll be interesting to see once the weather normalizes what those numbers look like with much lower interest rates, about 0.75% lower than where we were this time last year. Agreed.
And then we always like to look at percent of properties with a price reduction, sitting at 32.1% versus 33% last year. So again, nothing really here. The only reason I put this chart in here is because we look at it every week. Otherwise, it's nothing to even really discuss at this time. So Josh, talking about shareholder wealth held by Americans 70 years and up. So there's this idea here, Josh, that in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to see the largest transfer of wealth that the United States, that the world rather, has ever seen. Because of boomers passing on and passing that wealth, if you will, down to the younger generation. So what are we looking at?
I like including charts like this for a number of reasons. It's sort of a Rorschach test for how you look at life. If you look at this and that makes you mad and you think it's so unfair that old people have so much money, then you're not aware that money is going to be filtering down to younger people. And there's a reason why older folks have more assets. It's that cumulative effect. You guys have probably all seen the video online where the guy says, hey, the first $100,000 of your net worth is the hardest. Once you have $100,000, your net worth is working for you and continues to grow. When you're 70 years old, you've probably had 35 to 40 years of having some wealth growing for you. So I like to throw this in here. As you said, Jeb, that silver tsunami is coming at some point. It won't be evenly distributed. Not everyone has parents and grandparents that are going to be leaving significant assets to them, but many people are. You do? You have wealthy grandparents, Jeb?
I do not. I'm giving the thumbs down. I don't know that I'll get anything other than debt. I'll probably accumulate some debt during this whole thing.
So it's just interesting to get a look at, because that is what I did. I threw this number, and I didn't get a number that I really liked. I threw this chart into Gemini, and I asked it, I said, hey, that cohort, the baby boomers that are hitting 70, that's the biggest cohort that we've had generationally. So this doesn't tell us per capita or per household. This just says how much wealth they hold. So it's always been true that the oldest people are going to be the richest. But this also, we got a giant cohort of people hitting that age, and they've been healthier than previous generations. They're living longer. I watched a 20-year-old episode of Dateline the other night, Jeb, and the mother of the unfortunate person who was murdered was looked like she was like 94 and had a walker. And we did a little math on her age and everything. She was 64 years old. Like a 64-year-old 20 years ago looked like an 84-year-old from today. So this is to be expected. These are good things that you have to look forward to. The next chart here was the one that I promised. This shows month over month change in total non-farm employment going back to 2021. So when things normalized after the world opened back up after COVID, you can look, the blue bars are the month over month. The orange is a 90-day moving average that kind of smooths things out. Any way you look at it, we were creating 800 to 1 million jobs as recently as 4 or 5 years ago each month. And now we're in the 40,000 range, less than 50,000 over the last few months. So when the Fed's looking at this and saying, do we need to stimulate the economy? Jobs are actually more important than inflation. They would tolerate some inflation if it meant keeping everyone working. And we're seeing this absolutely slowing down. So when we hear things like they're worried that that they might need to hike rates, it's kind of insanity. I don't know what would happen here. Those levers don't quite work the way they did in the past. But if we're raising rates and we're already losing jobs, that would just accelerate that. Again, Jeb told me to go and do a deep dive with Gemini or GPT to explain to me here why we don't see the short-term correlation. So this is Trueflation. It's fallen off a cliff over the last couple of months. Just since December, it's showing 0.87%. They're happy to say that over the long haul, there's a greater than 95% correlation to CPI. And the next one here we're showing is PCE, because Friday we get the PCE figures for this month. PCE is at 1.51. Either one of those are massively below the Fed's 2% target. So if they are correct, and this is predictive going forward, we are not going to see interest rates going higher. We will see them moving lower. We have some interesting information. So the way the monthly figure that you see is calculated, they look back at the month over month change for the last 12 months, they add them up and they round it. So on a monthly basis, you only see inflation was up 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.0, 0.10. That's not the way it works in the real world. So this kind of states it, changes it, tweaks it. But if we look in the next 3 months for PCE, which I believe we're getting these all on Friday, because of the government shutdown, we're at least getting December and January, Jeb. But by the end of February, we're going to have 0.9 fall off on the core and 1.1 fall off on the headline. So when we say fall off, it means they're not included in the most recent 12 months. So then we got to look forward and say, what data is coming on to replace it? The Cleveland Fed does a nowcast where they go through this and run those numbers for us. And we look at the highlighted ones there. They're saying December was 0.26 for headline, 0.19 in January, and 0.23. So we have 0.68 coming on. And what was the number there? We got 0.9 falling off, and then 0.72 coming on over the next 3 months for the core. And we got 1.1 there falling off. So we little quick reverse engineering. The Cleveland Fed has a pretty darn good track record of being very accurate with that. So I took the unrounded numbers. It's actually 0.95 that falls off on the core over the next 3 months, 1.02 on the headline. So both of them are going to improve by 0.23 and 0.32. So we're going to be at or below 2.5% on both headline and core. It gets harder over the next few months because we had a 0, I think, in March of last year, Jeb. And then April, May, June were all pretty reasonable. So unless we get some 0.0, some 0.10s, it's going to be harder to make progress. But that's why we like to look at that Truflation data and see, does it have predictive power? Does it tell us where that inflation is going to be over the next 4 or 5 months? Because if it does, it's going to be moving lower, and the Fed will absolutely be out of play. This chart here is just the candlesticks of the 10-year Treasury. We had that purple up channel that we were in there for quite a period of time, going on about 3 months, and we definitely broke that over the last week. We broke below that 4.10 level last week as well. So the next resistance is at 4.0. Jeb, you have a feeling from the technicals that we're going to break it. This is not unheard of, that when you see what
not break it. I think we're going. I think we're touching. I think we're going there at least.
Okay. Well, we had in 9 trading sessions, we went from 4.3 almost down to 4.04, 4.06.
Yeah.
It's not abnormal to give some of this back without changing the trend here. So from that perspective, it'll be interesting to see where it goes over the next couple of weeks. The only real bad news here, or negative news we had on the interest rate front over the last week, is the spreads between mortgage rates and treasuries. I calculated it slightly differently. We use it. Fred has the Optimal Blue Mortgage Market Index, which is available daily, versus the weekly number that Freddie Mac puts out. And that's up to about 1.94 today. A week ago was at 1.86. So rates beyond just the movement in the 10 are up about 0.1% over the last week. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think we got ahead of ourselves. So I think 1.9 to 2 may be reasonable here for the foreseeable future, but we'll watch that. In terms of actual interest rates, what does that mean for you? A slight bit of improvement over the week, a little bit worse over the last couple of days, but just a hair over 6% for the best qualified borrowers on a 30-year fixed, and FHA and VA closer to that 5.625 range. If you have worse credit, it's going to be a little bit worse. If you have a huge down payment, an 800 credit score, it could be slightly better.
All right, good stuff. So this is that part in the show where I say, hey, if you want to get in touch with Josh about a loan, looking to buy real estate locally or anywhere in the United States, can definitely connect you with one of our realtor partners. Use that link in the description of the video there, or scroll in the bottom, jebsmith.net/start, and you can get in touch with Josh and myself, and we can guide you through that process. So, Josh, this is the time where we would normally go to the comments. We got, 40-something people watching YouTube at the moment, couple on Instagram. And all we have is a bunch of comments. We don't have any questions. So
we've educated them. They've all become educated.
They're fully educated home buyers at this point. So we've done our job. But there are a couple comments in here that just thinking us. So I feel like, why not post it? It's our show. Let's pat ourselves on the back. Aurelius thinks, hey guys, thanks for doing. I can't read. Thanks for the great info. We saw Anna, thanks for educating us, but also ask us to please talk about the Atlanta market. So here's the thing. Don't follow Atlanta at all, really, just based on what I read and kind of headline news and some numbers. The problem with a city like Atlanta is it's a lot like LA in the sense that there's so many micro pockets of neighborhoods in different areas that, we could talk about general numbers of, say, Atlanta, but it wouldn't do you any good or most people any good, because there's pockets there that are probably in demand while others are sitting. And it's just about knowing those areas. And quite frankly, I don't know them. I'm not local to the market and don't have enough information there. But Josh, maybe we can bring on somebody from the Atlanta market, maybe, and have that conversation.
Should we bring Shahida on? Have her tell us all about it?
Maybe we could do that. We could get her back on the show and have a conversation, and she can inform us on what's happening in Atlanta. How's that? I'll try to set that up, see what we can do. Maybe a guest appearance just to pop in and let us know.
We haven't had a guest in a while, but we had a couple of guests that we brought on had really bad tech setup. So we either couldn't see them. It looked like they were pixelated, or they cut out and had to disappear. So we just need someone.
Maybe it was us, Josh. Maybe it was our internet connection.
It was not. We are infallible, Jeb. So it clearly was not us.
Clearly misconstrued there, but that's okay. We've got, what do you see? I can't read here. Dre? Is that Dre?
D. Reynoso, and they actually have a question after this comment.
D, there you go. Says, love the comment. I would love the content. Hopefully we can buy a home sometime this summer. So we appreciate you watching. If there's something specific you want us to cover in a podcast episode separately from this, let us know. You know, the podcast has been going for just over 3 years, Josh. We're up to almost 500,000 downloads on the podcast. We're going to hit it probably in the next month or month and a half. Big number. But we've done 210 episodes. We recorded 210 today. So we appreciate you guys watching, appreciate the support. If you don't listen to Spotify or Apple, you can go to YouTube and catch the show there. But either way, we appreciate all the support and you guys continuing to reach out. But with Josh and I, every week we struggle because we're like, we've had that conversation. We've had that conversation. There's a conversation. There's no conversation we haven't had about mortgage and real estate. But this is where you guys can be part of the show and say, hey, listen, this is what I'd love to know more about. We want to become educated home buyers. This is what we're missing. So if there's something out there, drop us a comment. You can send us an email. Either way, if it makes sense to you and the viewers, we will definitely do more of that. So Josh, you said D. Reynoso had another question. What is it?
Yep. So let's get to the question. Do you believe that the Central Valley will have a correction in price this year? I'll give big picture view and then definitely throw your 2 cents in on it, Jeb. All of California. If you look, I mean, Central Valley is different, but what do we have? We have more affordable areas, kind of starting at Bakersfield up to Sacramento. They're central-ish California, where they're close to San Francisco, close to Los Angeles, not real close, but close enough that people go, hey, I can still be within a couple hours drive to my family, but can afford a home. Those areas have seen a little bit of pricing pressure. Sacramento's been a little bit tough. Mm-hmm. For the most part, relatively flattish. I think with rates down, people feeling a little bit better and buying, slightly positive. But to me, I look at it, probably expect something pretty similar to what we expect nationwide, which is end of the year, somewhere between 0 and 2% appreciation. Probably going to be positive, but not a huge number.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it. I mean, unfortunately, again, it's like, what do I specialize in? Orange County. I can tell you my thoughts on Orange County. I can tell you Riverside, San Bernardino, some of that. Start getting up to Central Valley. It's a little bit out of my wheelhouse just because it is an entirely different market. But what I will say is it's an entirely more affordable market than Southern California and or San Francisco, San Jose, like those markets out there. So it is that market where people go where they're like, I'm priced out. This is where I'm going. I think that continues to happen because I don't think Los Angeles County is going to become more affordable, really. And I don't think the Bay Area is going to become more affordable. So people are still going to migrate to this area for more affordable housing. Does that mean it can't go down? It doesn't. But I just think that, not that there's a bottom underneath it, but I think there's enough demand there to keep prices more sideways than anything else. That's my 2 cents. And I could be completely wrong on that, but that's just me talking about what I've seen over the last couple of years and what I think, just based on conversations with people, where things are headed.
And to circle back and close a loop, this is where it's really important that you're working with a solid professional agent, because the numbers that you need to be looking at don't vary from market to market. The numbers vary, but the numbers that you should be looking at: days on market, inventory, how has it changed over the last 90 days? How has it changed over the last year? So this is where, if you don't have someone that has that, Jeb's network is really, really good.
I got a great agent in Central area. Yeah.
We end up doing financing and working with a lot. We closed one today. Riley, a listener here, closed out in Vegas. We closed that one with an agent that you referred, who's done a great job for several buyers here from the show. And it's really important that you have someone that can give you that info on your market. It's hard to know. It's hard to know Atlanta and the Central Valley and Orange County. You should be looking at the same data, but when that's your micro market, you should know it like the back of your hand. And if you're talking to an agent that doesn't really have their finger on that pulse and can tell you those numbers right off the top of their head, move on to someone else. It's very important in this current market.
Good stuff. Platinum Black says, in Orange County, there's a pretty big premium to buy versus rent. Has that always been the case? Any chance that ever normalizes? No, it's not always been the case. Josh tells the story, of the GFC and slightly after that. I mean, coming into 2011 ish, like probably was the last time it was somewhat similar to rent versus buy. depending. I mean, if you had 20% down, if you're putting zero down or low down payment, it's often more expensive to rent. But when you have a reasonable down payment, there was a time where it definitely made sense. And especially in other parts of the country, Orange County is a bit of an anomaly just because prices are so high. Will that ever normalize? I don't think it will normalize at this point. I think the disparity is so far that, will it become better? Probably at some point, but will it ever normalize where it's a 1-to-1? And I don't think that could happen.
Let's kind of
without a lot more inventory.
Let's use that time frame that you mentioned, 2011, maybe as late as 2013. I would tell people, like, my market where I first started working in the 90s was Anaheim. I told Jeb this morning, the first purchase mortgage that I ever did was a $28,000 condo purchase in Anaheim, California in 1995. So it tells you a very, very different market. But in 2013, you could buy FHA in Anaheim and your payment was roughly equivalent, maybe $100-$200 more than owning a home. And in the last 13-14 years, that's gone massively out of whack. So that was abnormal that it was that low. We've always had, you would expect to pay a premium. And in an area like Orange County, the nicer parts of LA County, any dense urban areas with high incomes and good jobs, you've expected to pay that premium, especially coastal stuff. So from that perspective, I would say I was trying to run the numbers in my head, and I would have to go back, and this is speculative, Jeb. In 97, I bought my first condo. The all-in payment, taxes, insurance, HOA, everything was like $1,400. I probably could have rented that for $1,000. At the worst point, that was probably, a $3,500 a month rental and a $7,000 payment. So instead of 40% more, it was like double. So those spreads blow out and normalize over time, but both the rent to own premium and the multiple of income to home prices, it gets bigger. It just gets bigger over time. So when it normalizes, the normalizing doesn't mean it goes back to where it was in the past. It means it goes down. 2013 was abnormal because that spread, that premium was low, and now is abnormal because it's high. But normalizing doesn't mean it ever goes back to where it was. I don't think we're going to see that. But normalize, yeah, it should improve, but not necessarily go back anywhere near where it was.
All right, Josh, we got two different questions in Texas. We got one, they're moving to Texas, planning to invest in multiple properties. Want a house hack over the next decade, working with you. Struggling to find a great deal. When should you get in, even if it's not the best deal? So when I read what you're writing, that's the only way you would be able to read it. When I read what you've said there, you're investing. Investing is different than a primary home, right? Your primary home is you're there for the foundation, for all the things that we've talked about. Investing in real estate is different, right? In my opinion, or mentor's opinion that I trust, you're either investing for one of two things. You're either investing for cash flow or you're investing for appreciation. Rarely ever can you get both when trying to get it. Now, there are cases when you can short-term rental and Airbnb, and yes, in California, appreciation does happen over time. So yes, all of that. But when you're thinking about the investment, it's either one or the other. Texas, in that area, what's happened with building and all of that and so on and so forth, I would think you'd probably be investing more for cash flow than anything else. So the numbers are there. They either make sense or they don't. So when you're investing, what's the monthly payment? What's the all-in on that? Taxes, insurance, you're putting money away for repairs, all of that. Does it pencil out? One of our friends, Josh, friend of the show, Michael Zuber, says don't have alligators, right? Don't have these properties that essentially eat away at your income, your monthly, whatever it is. So it's not something Josh and I can answer. It either makes sense on paper or it doesn't. And for each person, it looks a little bit different depending on how much they're trying to gain.
Again, it's hard with the usernames to put people that we're talking to, match them up to a username. But if this is who I think it is, I will tailor the answer to that because I think I know what you're doing. If I wanted to stop doing loans for the next 90 days, move to Texas, I could acquire 10 single-family residences at 35% below market. It would be a full-time job, but I could do it. But what I couldn't do is I'm going to move to one small town in Texas and acquire maybe even one in that property, in that type of a discount. Those discounts are out there in markets like that where things are not moving as quickly. You get distressed sellers. They don't have 25 people. Like Jeb listed a house in Orange County a couple of years ago. We figured it was worth $950 because it needed a full gut rehab, and he had multiple investors end up closing at like 1.1 million because there were multiple investors going after it. Throughout Texas, especially small town Texas, people that need to sell, they inherited a property, financial trouble. They don't necessarily have that time and the leverage of multiple people coming in and making offers. So I have no problem saying I could move to a more affordable area of the country, less dense, and be able to do that. It would be a full-time job, and there were some strategies you'd have to use. But when I say I want to be in this one city or even in this one county, when there might only be 2,500 houses in the entire county, or I want this specific property type, you're limiting yourself. If you're saying I'm an investor and I'm going there to invest, you need a wider radius. If you're saying I'm going there to acquire properties to live in that I'm going to turn into a rental over time, it increases the difficulty of the task, especially if you have a proximity issue where you need to be close to a job.
All right, there you go with some context. Another question about Texas, Josh. When should you worry about inventory being low? I'm in Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we want to buy in a couple of months. I'm not seeing a lot of inventory showing up in our area. So here's the thing. For one, understand it's that time of the year. Inventory is typically lower this time of year. I would expect to see inventory start to pick up, especially here in Southern California over the next couple of weeks to the next 3 to 4 to 5 months. Inventory is going to continue to rise. Is it the same in Dallas? Can't say for sure, but I know seasonally it's a similar seasonal pattern as the Southern California, but their weather sucks a lot worse than ours does here. But that means things are going to get warmer here soon. People are going to start listing their homes, and that's going to happen probably through summer. So I would expect to see more inventory. When do you worry about it being too low? When you can't find what you want. I mean, is it a reason to worry? It's not, but it's, I got to imagine in Texas, based on what I'm hearing, you're going to see more property coming to the market. So just my thoughts. I wouldn't worry about anything. I would just continue to look and be ready so that when the right property is available, you're ready to make an offer and you're not behind the 8 ball. So if you need to get pre-approved, there's a link, scroll in the description there, jebsmith.net/start, and Josh can help you out. All right. Let's see.
So he followed up and said that was him. And he says, I've got a pretty wide buy box. So that to me is the important part. I know that the properties that we've looked at are in fairly small communities. And if you're in a small community, there's just not a lot to choose from. It makes it harder. So opening yourself up geographically to more cities. And there certainly are some strategies. If you're waiting for things that are on market, it's different than going after off market properties. And if you have some time and you have some interest in doing that, we can talk about a few different ways of
that's really where the opportunities are. The opportunities are offline, because those are the ones that aren't getting all the eyeballs. So anyway, it will get better.
No, it will never. It will never get better.
Kevin says it's going to get better.
No, Kevin says it will never get better.
It will.
Your reading skills are deteriorating as the show goes on. It will never get better. This is it. This is the best. Today is the best it's ever going to be, Jeb. It is all downhill from here, according to Kevin.
If today is the best it ever got, Josh, it would be okay. I'd be okay.
But it's never going to get better. Not one day. You will not have one day better than today. This was your best day, Jeb.
If this was my best day, Josh, then it's okay.
We've had some people in our sphere of influence. We've had some really bad days here recently. So yes, 100%. Things could be much, much worse. We all should be thankful for our blessings.
And not saying that being sarcastic at all. That's the truth. So, all right. Now's a good time. If you have questions, if you're watching on Instagram, there's a couple people. The majority of you guys are here on YouTube, but put questions in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. Josh and myself guide you through, help you become educated home buyers if that's your goal. If not, you can just talk shit to us and we'll read that too. Like, we're up for anything. We're up for a good time, guys. Not a long time.
This is great, Jeb. It says he's out of focus, person on the right. So I am on the right here, and I've had a problem with this camera wanting to autofocus on this mic.
I told you we got to change.
You may not be able to hear me, but I'm going to get the mic out of frame, and hopefully we can do this, and hopefully make it focus on me. Hopefully they're not saying it's you, Jeb, because when we look at ourselves on these monitors, our faces are so tiny that it's hard to tell.
Yeah, people don't understand that we're just staring into a camera lens over here, trying to act like we know what we're doing. Yeah, we don't. We have no idea. It's been 5 years, and we're still trying to figure this out, as you guys can imagine. But anyway, we do appreciate you being here. If you find any value, make sure you hit the thumbs up, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you haven't checked out the podcast, we're almost 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube. That's a nice little vain metric that we like to hit. Just lets us know that people appreciate the show, like the show. So if you haven't done so already, head over there and like it. We do appreciate that as well. So
Jeb,
anyhow, but the audio hasn't changed, Josh. That's a good thing.
We've got a question, and we've got this question probably 25 times in the 5 years of doing this, and you've answered it every time, and you're going to give your stock answer, and it's a good one, but I'm going to answer it because it's not as political. Anna is back and says, what are your thoughts about the NACA program? No down payment, no closing costs, no PMI. It sounds amazing, right? Why would anyone do anything different? Because it's like a purple unicorn. If you could get a purple unicorn pony for your child for their 3rd birthday, it would be the greatest gift ever. But purple unicorn ponies don't exist. That's basically the equivalent of the NACA program.
Wow, you really shit on that, Josh.
So Jeb's answer is going to be, I made a video on it. I'm not an expert on it, but in the comments section, there are people that have gone through it and can give you really good insights. And there apparently are a couple of purple unicorn hunters in there, because a couple of those folks say that they have successfully done it. I have never, in 30 years of doing this, come across someone who has successfully completed the program. Jeb had to make a video that has 50,000 views to get comments to find someone who can do it. So if you get it and you close it and you are the purple unicorn, come back. We'll have you on as a guest, and we'll explain how you successfully navigated that morass.
Yeah. So here's the thing. NACA, is it available? Is it a real program? It is. I think the cons outweigh the pros. And you have to be very patient. And based on the conversation, like Josh said, I've never done NACA, don't know anything about it, only covered it because people kept asking about it, went and did my research, did a video on it, which is now probably 3 years old, but people still comment on that video, and the comments are where the gold lies, because they're people, that have either been through the program, tried to go through the program, and they're giving you the real feedback. So if you're interested, search my channel, NACA, for that program, and you can see what real people have. Real people. These are real people, Josh. They're not AI bots. They're real people, what they said about it. So anyway, this is the value of a show, Josh, something like this. So Papa Audit, is that what I'm reading here?
That is.
Who is giving us feedback here, says, I was just watching your video. Yeah, just about to watch your video. You popped up on my timeline, watching a video about affordability, so on and so forth. Then I saw you're on live, and he's new here. So appreciate you watching. Appreciate you jumping in. I've done several of those videos that you're looking at there, but hopefully you can find something based on, I think a couple of them are based on where interest rates are today. So they should be fairly accurate depending on what your debt load is. But if you ever have questions, we're here every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we answer questions live and help guide you through that process. So appreciate you being here. Appreciate the support.
Jeb, we have a very self-serving question here for Josh.
Let's hear it.
So we just answered, Jeb has a great video on NACA that everyone has watched. I have a very small YouTube channel with about 800 subscribers, not 150,000, but the one video, there's actually 3 or 4 on there. The question is, what are your thoughts on the California Dream for All program? The series that we did there, people give really good feedback. It gives a good overview. And go watch those videos on my channel. It's at Josh Lewis CMC. But the bottom line is, if you can get the money, it's a great program. If I did not own a home and I was eligible and I won the lottery and got one of the vouchers and could go get it, I would do it 8 days a week. There are crazy people out there that will tell you, oh, it's a terrible deal. They're going to take your equity. Well, no shit, they're going to take your equity. They're giving you a 20% down payment. They're not
taking it all, though,
of their own heart. They're going to take 20% of your equity for giving you a 20% down payment. You would get 100% if you put up 100% of money in the last few years. It's been 300 million, I think. It's a weird program in terms of they give out all the vouchers and they give those people a period of time to go ahead and find the property. And if they don't, then their voucher expires and they give another round of vouchers out. So we had a big pop last year and then not much happened. And then you had people calling up, hey, they called me on, I got a second chance voucher. So I would say if you can get the money, it is the best deal out there. And I hate Cal HFA. I don't like any of their programs except for this one. If you could get this one, it is a great deal.
All right. So Anna's asking, how would a purple unicorn contact you? Well, I think Josh needs to probably do some mushrooms or acid and then fall
She's
asleep.
the purple unicorn.
And you're
I'm
going
not
to
the
come
purple
in
unicorn.
his dreams. That's it. He has to be dreaming for the purple unicorn to come up. That scroll at the bottom there, jebsmith.net/start will get you in touch with Josh, the team, myself, if you need me, and we can guide you through that process. So hopefully that's helpful, but appreciate the good questions. Papa Audit said he does have a question, but I don't see the question. So put it in here.
Come. But what I want to say, Jeb, is this is really important. My favorite YouTube video of all time. Do you ever remember Charlie and Candy Mountain, the unicorn that went to Candy Mountain?
No.
You guys all do yourself a favor and search for Charlie and Candy Mountain. The first original one, they made some follow-ups. It wasn't good. You will think you took mushrooms and there's a weird thing going on in your head. And it's the best. I just love it. My wife would just absolutely hate it and would make me turn it off. I watched it upwards of 1,000 times.
Fantastic. There you go. I don't know what my favorite YouTube video is of all time. I constantly find new ones that just crack me up. I'm thinking about one right now. It's hilarious. I can't say it here, but it is just so good. Oh, Josh, so good. It was the one where it was a political one, and they had a guy talking, and then they cut to oh God, I can't think of what it was. They were making fun of politics, and it was absolutely hilarious. But nevertheless, I move on. All right. Papa Audit says, I'm on the journey of saving 20% for a home. My lease is up in August, so that's my deadline. Can you get a lower interest rate than the current interest rate, or is that the limit? So, Josh, when you're talking about interest rates out there in the market, talk about what a par rate is, and then talk about how to get potentially lower rates, or in some cases, what happens if you were to take a higher rate.
So 95% of you are going to get an agency loan, or government. So Fannie Mae loan, Freddie Mac loan, FHA, VA, USDA. So all of the government loans get sold in Ginnie Mae pools, and the Fannie Freddie loans go to their own conforming pools. They have a value in the marketplace. So yes, every lender is going to price slightly differently. But I will say, if you're going to call 20 lenders because you think someone has magic, no one has magic. It's all the same loans. They're all getting sold to the same place. You might find someone with a lower margin where maybe they're 1/8% lower in interest rate. Generally, what we find is those are call center operations, kind of churn and burn. Had a client this week reached out, and we're going through the numbers, and he says I got this quote from someone. And I said, cool, tell me about that person. And we look it up, and the numbers for that person is just a call center. And we looked, and I said, how was the experience? What was it like when you talked to this person? And in general, what he came away with, he was very busy. He wanted to get my credit card to charge an appraisal, and there wasn't a whole lot of strategizing about this. So for the most part, all of those loans get sold to the same places in the secondary market. You're not going to see a huge difference. Now, do you want a lower interest rate? Can you get a lower interest rate? Absolutely. So in addition to your 20% down, if you want to pay 1 or 2 points, the par rate is what we're looking at, what you can get for 0 points. If you call up Rocket tomorrow, they're going to quote you a rate lower than that. And it's going to include a couple of points, which most of our first-time buyers aren't putting 20% down. They're putting 3, 3.5, 5% down. They don't have an extra couple percent to pay to buy that rate down. So on any given day, if today's rate is 6.05, according to Mortgage News Daily, that's not the only rate available on the rate sheet. You can take a rate of 7%, and the lender's going to go, this is awesome. We make more money with a 7% interest rate. We'll pay all your closing costs for you. Or you may say, I don't qualify at 6.05. I needed it 5.25. And they say, cool, pay us 3% up front. You're basically prepaying the interest that they're going to lose by giving you 5.25% instead of 6%. So absolutely, you can get a different or a better interest rate. You can get a worse one if you pick up the phone and call the wrong person, but reputable lenders should be in a pretty narrow range. And the most important thing you can do is find someone who is an expert, knowledgeable, and will take the time, effort, and energy to go through with you what you're trying to accomplish, what your goals are, what your timeline is, and make sure you're in the right loan program at the best terms available.
All right, good stuff. So Josh, while I was on the phone, I received a text message from a friend, someone I didn't even know ever.
Someone you didn't know, they're a friend, but you didn't know them?
Know they, ever even saw the show. And they text me the video of Charlie the Unicorn. And so I watched about 10 seconds. I couldn't hear it, so I don't know what it was, but I could, you could go down a rabbit hole with that, Josh. So I'll watch it later. I'll give my feedback next week.
You'll have to watch it because there's a big payoff. There's a big payoff. The first part is good. It just gets better the whole way through.
All right. Well, I'll let you know next week what I think.
Can we say who it was that shared Candy Mountain?
Yeah, Ryan. His name is Ryan. Said, yeah, he dropped it in my
I appreciate it that there are people out there doing the Lord's work to help us while we're busy doing the show.
Oh, too good. Anyway, it is what 10 minutes to go in the show, unless you guys don't have questions, in which case this is the end of the show. So I'll give you guys a couple questions here. Charlie's an absolute classic.
Yes, there we go. That is the correct answer. Classic. That's the Internet Hall of Fame video.
Fantastic. There we go. But no, if you have questions, put them in now. If you need to get in touch with Josh, myself, jebsmith.net/start, we'll get you in touch with myself and the team. Like I said, I can, Josh, I don't know, we've closed 2 out-of-state referrals this year with agents across the U.S. I don't know. How many deals did I say? 15, 16 deals from YouTube this year so far of you guys reaching out. So use us as a resource. We're not here just talking heads. We actually do loans, sell real estate. We want to help you. So if we can be part of that process, make sure you reach out. But if not, we'll see you next week. Adios.
Amigos.